Good evening, everyone. If you'd all like to take your seats. Hello to everyone online. I think that Katrina just panned around to see the incredibly impressive dancers and costumes that we have here in the audience. It's a huge treat for all of us and for everyone online too. So thank you all for coming and treating us to this evening. But two things before I begin. The first is that it is the two central people to tonight's event. It's their name day, Katerina, Katrina, and Rani. Happy name day. Yeah, no. And it's always nice to embarrass them when we can. It's a huge, the second thing I must mention, the fire exits. So should anything untoward happen, there is a fire exit you can see marked in green, just behind Rani, that way, and then it'll bring you onto the fire escape, onto the stairs on that way, and then there's another fire escape to the left. So use both escapes should any need be. Now, to start in earnest, it is a huge pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's extravaganza. It's a tribute to Byron, and it has been with huge amounts of love and enthusiasm curated by our wonderful friend, Ginger Zaimis. Ginger is a celebrated author, poet, and literary translator, just to name a few of her many talents. She is a prolific publisher. She has 7 monographs, including the new book, which is beautiful. It is a tactile, beautiful piece. In her new book, Antigone, the Heroic Crown, which is written in a kind of Renaissance manner, which in some respects speaks to the event tonight too. So she's written lots of amazing volumes, books of poetry, which themselves have been translated into many different languages too. And I kind of like to think that Ginger herself is in many respects the epitome of what the BSA is about, drawing on ancient texts, ancient ideas, ancient celebrations, or archaeology in the case of the BSA, to make significant contributions to contemporary issues while raising awareness about said issues. For tonight's event, we are really privileged to be able to host Ginger's vision that she is bringing together in terms of a group of exceptional writers and poets and creatives and dancers to mark 200 years since Byron's death. And with that, I would like to welcome Ginger, and good evening to everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was a very gracious introduction. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of blushing. Thank you all. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today with such good company. I would really extend my heartfelt thanks to the British School, obviously Director Rebecca Sweetman, and their gracious invitation, hospitality, as well as Maria Nikolaidis, President of the Friends, and also Katerina Gallagher, who's also her name day, as Rebecca reminded. My gratitude and admiration to the poets, historians, and the history keepers who are going to speak tonight with me and read, and thank you very much for sharing your light. I'd like to introduce them just briefly so we know who's on the reading card tonight. Anna Griva, Miletis Militopoulos, Sofka Zinoviev, Yanis Petropoulos, Rana Haddad, Dimitrios Stathakopoulos, Fokian Zaimis, Konstantinos Bouras, Orfeas Apergis, and Penny Sakopoulou. I would also like to give my special thanks to Maria Papamarkou, ο πρόεδρος των Λύκειων Ελληνίδων, as well as the board members Mauzi Tsaldari and Penny Sakopoulou, philologist and ephoros for the Lύκειων, who've generously contributed such beautiful costumes and dance, as well as the music director. Likewise, last and never least, thank you to you, all of you coming out tonight, as well as everyone online. Hi. I'd like to first just quickly introduce one of our warriors. I'd like to bring forth Konstantinos Nikolaidis, please. Would you come over and step forth here, please? Konstantinos is wearing a beautiful stogia, mainly from the Rumuli, central mainland Greece. It's obviously a handmade, authentic replica of the traditional Mrs. Zoe Stelio of the city of Messolonghi. He wears, the head is covered in a black cloth, and the vest, the firmly, is with long sleeves and no jewelry, as he is in battle uniform. His fustanella is longer, as you would note, and the leather belt called the salachi is, you will note, salachi, which hold the armaments, the traditional armaments that they would have used in 1821. The leggings are woolen and secured with the knee by dark ribbons, and the shoes are traditional saurukia, but without the tassel, as you will know. Okay, without the, it's not wearing them. Then I would like to introduce, please, Stelios Lekas, who exhibits a high-ranking military uniform, normally worn during religious celebrations, but also important occasions such as the national assemblies. You can note the intricate work on the tapestries here, which are really all, again, handmade and or adorned. The weapon, let's say, there is no jewelry here, but even though there is the belt that hangs for ornamental yet official purposes, there's 2 pistols, and I think 1 dagger on the belt, brass pistols, and they're the carved sword called the pala. Over the leggings, there's protective gaiters bearing intricate decorations, and then the tsarukia bear an impressive tassel. This certified replica is also an original that was handmade in the city of Messolonghi by Nicholas Plakidas. Thank you. So I now would like to introduce our first poet to inaugurate tonight's event. She's a wonderfully talented poet and writer and friend of the Renaissance and philosophy. I would like to welcome Anna Griva, please.
Καλησπέρα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για τη φιλοξενία στον υπέροχο χώρο. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, Ginger, για την πρόσκληση. Θα σας διαβάσω ένα ποίημα για τον θάνατο του Λόρδου Βύρωνα. Αλλά πρέπει να σας πω και κάποια σχετικά πράγματα που νομίζω έχουν ενδιαφέρον. Ίσως να το γνωρίζετε ότι γύρω στα 7 χρόνια ο Λόρδος Βύρων πέρασε στην Ιταλία, ταξιδεύοντας σε διάφορες πόλεις, και ανάμεσα στα ταξίδια του ήταν και μια επίσκεψη στην Αμβροσιανή βιβλιοθήκη του Μιλάνου. Εκεί αναζήτησε την αλληλογραφία του ποιητή Πιέτρο Μπέμπο με την Λουκριτία Βοργία. Μια παρεξηγημένη γυναίκα μέσα στην ιστορία, η Λουκριτία Βοργία, και ανακάλυψε πραγματικά έναν θησαυρό διαβάζοντας τα γραμματά τους και τα ποίηματά τους, και εκεί μέσα βρήκε και μία μπούκλα της. Όταν λοιπόν ο φρουρός της Αμβροσιανής βιβλιοθήκης έφευγε, εκείνος βρήκε την ευκαιρία να κλέψει ένα κομμάτι από αυτή την μπούκλα, και ο θρύλος λέει ότι πάντα την είχε μαζί του σαν το πιο πολύτιμο πράγμα. 1824. Μια σιωπηλή επανάσταση. Η Λουκριτία Βοργία δεν πάτησε ποτέ το χώμα των Ελλήνων. Μονάχα 300 χρόνια αργότερα, προσκυνητής στον τάφο της, ο Byron, της έκλεψε μια μπούκλα φυλαχτό. Ύστερα διάβαινε μαζί της και της μίλαγε. «Οδός μου εσύ τη μνήμη σου, των γυναικών το αρχαίο μαντίο. Οδός μου εσύ την ομορφιά, Άμμος να ρέει το αίμα μου, καρπός της γης. Την τελευταία νύχτα σφιχτά κρατούσε τα μαλλιά της και έβλεπε μπρος του να περνούν όλα τα θάνατα κορίτσια, καθώς φούντωνε η Επανάσταση στις σιωπηλές πατρίδες των άστρων. So in English, Byron lived in Italy for 7 years. When he visited Milan, went to the Ambrosian library where he read the correspondence of Lucrezia Borgia and Pietro Bembo, the famous poet. And in a letter, Lucrezia had sent to Bembo a lock of her hair. So Byron found this lock and stole a part of it. My poem is on Byron's death. 1824. A silent revolution. Lucrezia Borgia never set foot on Greek soil. But 300 years later, Byron, a pilgrim at her grave, stole a strand of her hair as a talisman. From then on, he would walk beside her and talk to her. Oh, bestow me your memories of the woman's ancient oracle. Oh, bestow me the beauty to make my blood flow as sand, a fruit of this earth. That final night, he grasped the strand tightly, and all the immortal girls passed before his eyes as the revolution raged on in the silent homes of stars. The translation is, the poem is translated by Orfeas Josephine Papadogia. Thank you.
Right now, I'd like to welcome Meletis Militopoulos, the author and historian. He will speak to us today on Byron and the Greek Revolution. Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ την κυρία Ζαΐμη και την Βρετανική Σχολή για την τιμητική πρόσκληση. Σε λίγα λεπτά πρέπει να σκιαγραφίσω την προσωπικότητα του Λόρδου Βύρωνα στην σχέση του με την Ελληνική Επανάσταση. Και θα ξεκινήσω λέγοντας ότι εγώ δεν θεωρώ τον Βύρωνα φιλέλληνα, αλλά Έλληνα. Γιατί επέλεξε να ταυτιστεί, να αγωνιστεί και να πεθάνει για την Ελλάδα. Κάτι που δεν το έχουν κάνει όλοι οι Έλληνες. Αλλά ο Λόρδος Βύρων, από επιλογή και μόνον, εγκατέλειψε την προνομιακή του ζωή. Όπως ξέρετε, έγινε Λόρδος ηλικία 10 ετών όταν πέθανε ένας αδελφός του παππού του που είχε τον τίτλο. Ήταν ένα παιδί που ζούσε με τη μητέρα του φτωχικά και ξαφνικά του ανακοίνωσε στο σχολείο ο δάσκαλος, το σήκωσε πάνω όταν έφτασε η πληροφορία ότι είχε πάρει τον τίτλο ευγενής και του είπε «Λόρδε μου, τα σέβη μας». Και ένα παιδάκι 10 χρονών ξαφνικά έγινε Λόρδος με όλα τα προνόμια και τα εισοδήματα βεβαίως που είχε αυτός ο τίτλος της αγγλικής ελίτ. Ήταν μια χαοτική προσωπικότητα, δεν ήταν απλή προσωπικότητα, ήταν πολύπλοκη και αντιφατική. Είχε χρέη, έπαιζε χαρτιά, είχε μια άστατη ερωτική ζωή. Ήταν ένας από τους λόγους που έφυγε από την Αγγλία. Πήγε στην Ιταλία. Στην Ιταλία υποστήριξε το κίνημα της Ιταλικής Ενοποίησης. Δηλαδή εκεί ήρθε σε επαφή με την Ιταλική πλευρά της Επανάστασης, του εθνικισμού, του φιλελευθερισμού. Εκεί γνώρισε και κάποιους Έλληνες οι οποίοι του μετέδωσαν την εικόνα μιας Ελλάδας που ήθελε να ελευθερωθεί από τους Τούρκους. Και στη συνέχεια επέστρεψε πάλι και έφτασε στην Ελλάδα όπου, για να πεθάνει στο Μεσολόγγι το 1824. Τώρα, ο ρόλος του στην Ελλάδα έχει αναλυθεί και συζητηθεί από πολλές πλευρές. Υπάρχουν διάφορες απόψεις, θεωρίες, σχολές σκέψης για το τι έκανε ο Βύρων. Έχει γραφτεί ένα βιβλίο, τον εμφανίζει βασικά ως σταθμάρχη της αγγλικής πολιτικής στην Ελλάδα. Τον έστειλαν οι Άγγλοι, η αγγλική κυβέρνηση, το αγγλικό πολιτικό σύστημα για να διακριβώσει τι ακριβώς γίνεται στην Ελλάδα και να μεταφέρει την εικόνα της Ελληνικής Επανάστασης, να εκφράσει μια γνώμη για το πώς θα πρέπει να αντιμετωπίσει η Μεγάλη Βρετανία, που είναι η παγκόσμια υπερδύναμη της εποχής, την Ελληνική Επανάσταση. Αυτό μπορεί να υπήρξε μία από τις, αν θέλετε, διαστάσεις της παρουσίας του Βύρονα, αλλά δεν ήταν η μόνη και ασφαλώς δεν ήταν η κυρίαρχη για έναν άνθρωπο που επέλεξε να πεθάνει στο Μεσολόγγι. Ο Byron είναι ο άνθρωπος ο οποίος πείθει Άγγλους τραπεζίτες να υποστηρίξουν οικονομικά την Ελληνική Επανάσταση, ο οποίος λειτουργεί ως εμβληματική φιγούρα φιλέλληνα, σε απομίμηση της οποίας έρχονται στην Ελλάδα εκείνη την εποχή χιλιάδες άνθρωποι ξένοι να πολεμήσουν. Άγγλοι, Γάλλοι, Γερμανοί, έτσι, Ιταλοί κτλ. Είναι επομένως ο άνθρωπος εκείνος που λειτουργεί ως επικοινωνιακός κρίκος μεταξύ της επαναστατημένης Ελλάδος και της Δυτικής Ευρώπης, και φαίνεται, υπάρχει μια τελευταία, αν θέλετε, θεωρία. Ένας ερευνητής ονόματι Σκουρτανιώτης, εξαιρετικός, έχει δημοσιεύσει πολλά βιβλία βασισμένα στα αρχεία της Ελληνικής Επανάστασης. Τελευταία δημοσίευσε μια σειρά επιστολών που δείχνουν ότι πιθανώς ο Byron να πέθανε ως θύμα δηλητηρίασης. Και μάλιστα οι άνθρωποι αυτοί που ας πούμε είναι οι συντάκτες των επιστολών αυτών είναι στενά συνδεδεμένοι με το Μαυροκορδάτο. Δηλαδή υπάρχει η θεωρία ότι ίσως ο Μαυροκορδάτος να μην ήθελε το Byron ανάμεσα σε αυτόν και ανάμεσα στην Ελλάδα και στην Αγγλία, για να μονοπολίσει ο ίδιος αυτή τη σχέση στην κατεύθυνση που ο ίδιος επιθυμούσε. Μάλλον δεν θα μάθουμε ποτέ. Η ουσία είναι ότι αν κάτι διατρέχει την ζωή του Λόρδου Βύρονα, είναι ο έρωτας. Και δεν εννοώ μόνο τον έρωτα ως, αν θέλετε, μια προσωπική, ως μια διάσταση της προσωπικής ζωής του ανθρώπου. Είχε έρωτα με την Ελλάδα, είχε έρωτα με τους ανθρώπους, είχε έρωτα με την ποίηση. Όλη του η δράση χαρακτηρίζεται από αυτό που είχε πει ο Γκαμπριέλ Γκαρσία Μαρκές όταν το ρώτησαν ποια είναι η ιδεολογία σας. Είπε: η μόνιμη ιδεολογία είναι ο έρωτας. Δεν έχω άλλη ιδεολογία. Αυτό ισχύει στο Λόρδο Βύρονα. Είναι μια ερωτική προσωπικότητα και η σχέση του με την Ελλάδα είναι ερωτική. Τη λάτρευε την Ελλάδα. Και αν θέλετε, αν κατατάξουμε, ας πούμε, σε κατηγορίες τους Έλληνες της εποχής εκείνης, ξέρω εγώ, ο πιο σημαντικός ασφαλώς στρατιωτικός ηγέτης είναι ο Κολοκοτρώνης. Έτσι, ο Καποδίστριας είναι η μεγάλη μορφή, η πολιτική και διπλωματική της Επανάστασης. Ο Πατριάρχης Γρηγόριος ο Πέμπτος είναι η εμβληματική, ας πούμε, μορφή του κλήρου. Νομίζω ότι από τον κόσμο των ξένων που ήρθαν στην Ελλάδα, ασφαλώς ο Λόρδος Byron είναι μόνος του και μετά όλοι οι άλλοι. Και δεν είναι τυχαίο ότι οι Έλληνες τον αγαπήσαν τόσο πολύ, ώστε έχουμε ακόμα και συνοικία Βύρονα στην Αθήνα. Έχουμε Βύρονες ακόμα και σήμερα. Υπάρχουν πολλοί Βύρονες στην Ελλάδα. Δηλαδή το όνομά του το υιοθέτησαν οι Έλληνες γιατί τον θεώρησαν δικό τους άνθρωπο, το Βύρονα. Και ότι πέθανε νέος, μάλλον ευνόησε την ιστεροφημία του, γιατί έμεινε στην συλλογική μας μνήμη του ελληνικού έθνους αυτό. Αν είχε επιβιώσει δεν ξέρουμε τι θα γινόταν μετά. Ήταν και χαοτική προσωπικότητα. Άλλαζε συνέχεια. Ήταν, αν θέλετε, μια μορφή πρωτέα, ας πούμε, πρωτεϊκή μορφή. Ότι πέθανε στο Μεσολόγγι νέος και σε μια πόλη η οποία ταυτίστηκε με την Ελληνική Επανάσταση και της οποίας αν θέλετε, η πτώση με την έξοδο προκάλεσε την οριστική μεταστροφή όλης της ευρωπαϊκής πολιτικής υπέρ της ελευθερίας των Ελλήνων. Ακόμα και ο Μέττερνιχ, μετά την έξοδο του Μεσολογγίου, έγραψε στο Σουλτάν ότι δεν μπορώ πια να σας υποστηρίξω. Τώρα πια είμαστε όλοι με τους Έλληνες. Έτσι. Είμαστε όλοι Έλληνες. We are all Greeks. Έτσι. Λοιπόν, τελειώνω με το εξής, γιατί μου έδωσε η κυρία Ginger 6 λεπτά, τα οποία τα πέρασα. Λοιπόν, τελειώνω με το εξής, ότι αυτή η φράση του Σολομού από τους ελεύθερους πολιορκημένους, έτσι, συγκλονιστική, μια φράση που εμπεριέχει, ας πούμε, φιλοσοφία, ψυχολογία, ηθική, ιστορία. Ο τελευταίος στίχος των ελεύθερων πολιορκημένων, που αφορά βέβαια κάτι που έγινε 2 χρόνια μετά το θάνατο του Βύρονα, ταιριάζει για τον έστω και 2 χρόνια πριν την έξοδο θάνατο του Βύρονα στο Μεσολόγγι. Δηλαδή ο άνθρωπος επέλεξε, αντί να πεθάνει σε ένα γεροκομείο ή σε ένα νοσοκομείο ή στο σπίτι του στο Λονδίνο, επέλεξε να πεθάνει νέος στην Ελλάδα, μέσα σε αυτή τη φοβερή φουρτούνα της Επανάστασης. Και εννοώ το στίχο που λέει ότι όποιος πεθάνει σήμερα όποιος πεθαίνει σήμερα, 1000 φορές πεθαίνει. Δηλαδή, ο θάνατος του Lord Byron ήταν άξιος σε πολύ μεγαλύτερο βαθμό από έναν κοινό θάνατο ενός ανθρώπου φυσιολογικό. Έτσι, ο τρόπος που πέθανε. Και για εμάς τους Έλληνες αυτό υπήρξε μια πολύ μεγάλη επιτυχία, δηλαδή ότι εμπνεύσαμε ως έθνος. Τι ήταν οι Έλληνες το 1821 που επανεστάτησαν? Ένα δούλο έθνος ανθρώπων υποσιτισμένων, με τεράστια προβλήματα. Ήταν εγκλωβισμένοι σε μια ασιατική δουλοκτητική δομή. Αυτό είναι η Οθωμανική Αυτοκρατορία. Είναι μια ασιατική απολυταρχία, ας πούμε. Εμείς λοιπόν κατορθώσαμε με την αυτοθυσία μας να εμπνεύσουμε έναν Λόρδο, το μεγαλύτερο ποιητή της εποχής του, να έρθει να πεθάνει για μας στην Ελλάδα. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
I'd now like to welcome up to the podium a very distinguished writer and author, Sofka Zinoviev. She's also friend of Greece, Philhellenes. We wear many hats tonight. Sofka, please.
Thank you. I'm now feeling a bit bad. I'm going to be speaking in English. Λυπάμαι που θα μιλήσω στα αγγλικά, αλλά έτσι τα έχουμε ανακατεμένα εδώ. So yes, Sofka Zinoviev, a British writer with Russian ancestry, living in Greece for many years, and my books, many of them, several fiction and non-fiction, have Greece and Greeks in them. My next novel out in May is called Stealing Dad, also lots of Greeks in that. Much has been written about Byron, the hero, the legendary poet with a capital P, the scandalous seducer, the early celebrity who loved to outrage. In Greece, it's usually the heroic Philhellene. In Britain, it's often all about the mad, the bad, etc., where we still cling to the old scandals, the gossip, his girlfriends, his boyfriends, his half-sister. But for me, what I've found, the more that I've learned about Byron, the more I want to get a sense of the real man rather than the myth, even if he was very much a part of the myth-making. And so in these short readings, I want to focus in on his humanity and his vulnerabilities. And to start off with, as our last reader suggested, if we think of young George as a child, disabled, overweight often throughout his life, from a broken home, with money problems, a child who was sexually abused, and who at that stage in his young life didn't have a prospect of becoming a lord or becoming rich. And then the story starts to feel different. I start to feel he's the human rather than the myth. So what I'm going to do is to read a few just small snippets from his friend John Trelawney and his reminiscences. I'm trying to grasp what it might have been like to be with the man I'd have loved to meet, not in a salon, I think. I'd have loved to go swimming with him or to climb a hill and have a picnic. So as we know, Byron had 2 trips to Greece, the first as a young man of 21 with his friend from university, Hobhouse. He was utterly enchanted with the place that inspired so many poems. And then, as we just heard of from the heroic point of view, his return to Greece in 1823, aged 35, feeling quite middle-aged and jaded, rather exhausted. He'd left England long before. He'd been living in Italy, and now was returning to the land that had given him such inspiration to fight for the Greek cause. So the first reading is they've come on the boat from Italy, Byron Trelawney and various Greeks, and they stop at Ithaca. So this is Trelawney. After landing, it was proposed to Byron to visit some of the localities that antiquaries have dubbed with the titles of Homer's School, Ulysses' Stronghold, etc. He turned peevishly away, saying to me, "Do I look like one of those emasculated fogies? Let's have a swim. I detest antiquarian twaddle. Do people think I have no lucid intervals that I came to Greece to scribble more nonsense? I will show them I can do something better." Then, after a long swim, Byron clambered up the rocks and, exhausted by his day's work, fell asleep under the shade of a wild fig tree at the mouth of a cavern. And then we fed off figs and olives and passed our night at a goat herd's cottage. That's where I would have loved to be with Byron, I think. Second little snippet is when they're at Kefalonia. And Trelawney writes, "Every afternoon, he and I crossed the harbour in a boat and landed on a rock to bathe. On one of these occasions, he held out his right leg to me, saying, 'I hope this accursed limb will be knocked off in the war.' 'It won't improve your swimming,' I answered. 'I will exchange legs if you will give me a portion of your brains.' 'You would repent your bargain,' he said. 'At times I feel my brains boiling as Shelley's did whilst you were grilling him.'" This is a rather macabre reference, of course, to the cremation of Shelley's remains on the beach in Italy. So to continue, our Greek passengers during the voyage said that the Greeks generally were in favor of a monarchical government. The Greeks on the island confirmed this, saying it was the only way of getting rid of the robber chiefs who now tyrannized and kept the country in a state of anarchy. And as they must have a foreigner for a king, they could not do better than elect Byron. The poets treated this suggestion lightly, saying, "If they make me the offer, I may not refuse it." Byron several times alluded to this in a bantering vein. It left an impression on his mind. And it's left an impression on my mind too. It's such an incredible fantasy to just think, imagine if Byron had become king in Greece. Maybe he wouldn't have gone to Missolonghi, wouldn't have had to die. And the mind boggles, really. History may have been very, very different. My third little and final snippet is a sadder one, which is Trelawney arriving in Missolonghi on the 24th or 5th of April, 1824. It's obviously a few days after Byron has died. He describes Missolonghi as being, quote, "on the verge of the most dismal swamp I have ever seen." He arrives at the house and is led upstairs by Byron's loyal servant, William Fletcher, who had been with Byron for many years, and there lay the embalmed body. On purpose, Trelawney asked Fletcher to go and fetch him some water because he wanted to do something. And of course, he was thinking about posterity and writing for all the thousands of people who wanted to know about what happened and the extraordinary pathos of a rock star of his times dying in this swampy backwater of Europe. So Trelawney writes, "I uncovered the pilgrim's feet and was answered. The great mystery was solved. Both his feet were clubbed and his legs withered to the knee, the form and features of an Apollo." And I've lost my last page, but I think he says, "and the legs of a sylvan satyr." So basically, this is very sad to think about Byron's disability, how he was living. There he was, this incredible hero, remarkable, inspired poet, great lover of his times, adored by so many people, and yet he had this terrible disability. where his feet, according to Trelawney, I'm really sorry I'm missing my last page, that both his feet were turned over, and he wore these shoes which were high-heeled on one side and went down on the other and was stuffed with cotton wool. And he used to lurch into a room on the toes of his feet and then put his best foot forward to sort of lean back and stop. And so it's not that I want to be prurient about what was wrong with Byron's body, but it's just an incredible thing to think about what he was living with every day. How hard it was for him, and yet what a remarkable hero and poet and inspiration. I'm going to finish there, but just I wanted to say that I did ask, and it was too late, if I could have some of the paraphernalia of what people still do, like putting Byron on T-shirts, Byron on mugs, Byron quotations. Still today, he's a kind of rock star, and that's rather amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sofka. That was lovely. Very interesting indeed, and most apt. So I'm going to introduce the next speaker, who regretfully was not with us tonight at the last minute due to last minute change of plans. Yannis Petropoulos. Yannis is he is basically he's many things actually, but we'll start professor of ancient Greek and the classics, emeritus director at the Center of Hellenic Studies at Harvard University, and he's also professor of humanities and a Gulbenkian fellow at the University of Lisbon. And he's going to recount, and I'm going to do it on his behalf, his reading of Byron and his his first travels when he landed in Europe into Portugal, Lisbon. Notes on the passage. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is one of Byron's earlier poems published between 1812 and 1818. Like these works, and has been described as a satanic self-portrait. The term Childe refers to a candidate for knighthood. The poet uses Spenserian stanzas and the archaizing language of Spenser's The Faerie Queene. Byron passes the storyline of his narrative on his travels. In the first canto, Harold sets off from England and sails across the Bay of Biscay on the west coast of France to the west coast of Portugal. He first sees from afar the city of Sintra on the foothills of Lisbon, lying in a forest. Sintra, then much smaller, still has many palaces rather, and elegant residences. Extract from Childe Harold. On the vessel flies, the land is gone, and winds are rude in Biscay's sleepless bay. 4 days are sped, but with the 5th anon, new shores described make every bosom gay, and Sintra's mountains greets with them on their way. Antagus dashing onward to the deep, his fabled golden tribute bent to pay, and soon on board the Lusian pilots leap and steer twixt fertile shores where yet few rustics reap. Childe Harold now gives his first impressions of Lisbon, seen from his ship, much depicted in this photograph or this lithograph here. The country has been invaded by Napoleon's armies and alliance with the Spaniards in 1807. British forces sided with the Portuguese a year later, and the Portuguese kept their pride nonetheless. What beauties doth Lisbon first unfold, her image floating on the noble tide, which poets vainly pave with sands of gold, but now whereon 1,000 keels did ride, of mighty strength, since Albion was allied, and to the Lusians did her aid afford, a nation swollen with ignorance and pride, who lick yet loathe the hand that waves the sword to save them from the wrath of Gaul's unsparing lord. On his visit to Cintra, the narrator bemoans the misery of the common folk. Poor, poor paltry slaves, yet born midst noblest scenes. Why, nature, waste thy wonders on such men? Lo, Cintra's glorious Eden intervenes in variegated maze of mount and glean. O me, what hand can pencil guide or pen to follow hath on which the eye dilates, through views more dazzling unto mortal kin than those whereof such things the bard relates, who to the awestruck world unlock Elysium's gates. At length, Harold continues his journey across the hilly outskirts of Lisbon. He is relieved to have escaped boredom in England. Oh, vales that teem with fruit's romantic hills, oh, that such hills uphilled a freeborn race, whereon to gaze the eye with joyance fills. Child Harold wins through many a pleasant place, though sluggards deem it but a foolish chase. The marvel men should quit their easy chair, the toilsome way and long, long league to trace. Oh, there is a sweetness in the air, the mountain air, and life that bloats ease can never hope to share. So that's simply excerpts from his first pilgrimage en route to Greece, first arriving in Lisbon. So I'd now like to welcome the next poet in tonight's reading, Rana Haddad. Rana, will you join us at the podium, please?
Thank you, Ginger, for inviting me to speak, to read something tonight. In my 20s, I used to write poetry, and then later I worked in journalism and I became more of a novelist. But this occasion, I decided to mix prose and poetry, to write something like a letter to Byron, imagining what would happen if I invited him to come to Athens this evening or tomorrow morning or something like that. So I'm going to read it now. Machines Writing Poetry, a letter to Lord Byron from 2024. From an era when we struggle to hear our own thoughts, our heartbeats, I write to you from the era of machines. We still talk of you, we still know of you, but if you visited us, you'd feel like a stranger. If you could travel across the tracks of time and turn up here at my doorstep, if you ring my bell, take the lift up to the 5th floor, you'll find that you only need to press a button for things to happen. As you walk in, you'll witness the entire city from my window. Yes, Athens is a modern metropolis now. It's no longer a sleepy village weighed down by the broken marble of history, recorded in books read by boys like you once were in an island far to the north. You are terrified because of your journey in the lift, and now you look at me as I look at you. Everything I wear astonishes you, while to me you look like someone dressed for a costume drama. You look out of the window and you see a metal bird. It draws lines of smoke in the air. This is how we make journeys now. We ride the wind. I press a button and the light turns on. It is dark outside. We don't need candles. Look at this, a microphone. I will record your voice for eternity. Perhaps I'll take the first ever photograph of you, using a machine that can hold your image with light. There is no need for brushes, no paint. All I need is to press a button. I will make a small cup of coffee, which I will brew for you on a gas stove. You will be surprised at how I can produce fire. Do you know what gas is? Many wars have been fought over it, and our world inhales it like its favorite narcotic. Your dream of bringing back to life a nation you first heard of as a boy came true. Below the mountain, a village carries your name. The coffee is ready. Have a sip and look out of the window. I see the way you must have held your quill as you play with your coffee spoon, the quill with which you wrote new worlds into being. Your name is a symbol of manly beauty and glamour, of poetry, of madness, of dreaming, of ego, of sadness, of someone powered by rocket fire. But you have not heard of rockets yet. What do you see outside the window? Above the mountain, metal spikes towering over the trees. You have not heard of television and radar. The trees look down on the city and do not understand why the sound of everything has changed so much, why there is light continuously, even when the sun sets, even when there are no moon or stars. Did you bring Greece back with your words? A pen was once like a sword, but now the pen has been replaced by a keyboard. We write today the way in your time some played the piano. We press buttons to make words which appear on screens made of glass and light. In the days when you existed, all you needed was a goose feather to write with, a ship built from the trunks of trees, powered by the wind, and horses to ride across the land to travel. The impossible journeys we dream of now are to other planets. We are building starships to Mars, rockets that we launch into space like bullets. We can instruct a machine to produce words that mimic poetry in rhyme, machines with mechanical minds. A young man alone like you could once change history, when words could be heard, when people took time reading a book of poetry or savoring a letter. A poet like you in your time could wear the blue jacket of eternity, the hat of yesterday's dreams and tomorrow's velvet boots of revolution. Today, a poet is no longer such a star in the firmament. Today, even machines can write poetry. Another thing will surprise you if you knew. Your daughter, Ada, a prodigy of mathematics, wrote down some notes in the margin of a notebook that changed our world. Not through words, but numbers. Everything has changed, and now machines don't only write poetry, but fight wars too. Both beauty and terror can now be outsourced to minds made of steel, omnipotent, omnipresent, a new artificial sultan of metal and plastic, a new emperor. The freedom you dreamt of in your time has become so fashionable in our day that modern-day rulers swear by it and proclaim to offer it at every turn. Freedom, the word, is everywhere to be heard, but most of us continue to search for it, and many continue to die for it. Every generation begins its journey to pluck it from the claws of tyrants. I see you wearing a rose on your lapel, chewing masticha gum, and in your breast pocket, a silver gun. Don't ask me questions. I will tell you what I can. There are words which once put together in a sequence can change history. Only a human being can write them. This is why we still need poets who sing the wild code of the human heart, of flesh and blood.
Thank you, Rana. That was lovely. Indeed, yes, we still need poets and human hearts, indeed. So I'd like to welcome the next speaker, who regretfully is down with flu. However, his paper shall be read today. I will actually welcome up to the podium Fokion Zaimis to read on behalf of Ottomanologos or Ottomanologist Dimitris Stathakopoulos, author, historian, musician, and composer. Fokion.
Okay, θα μιλήσω αγγλικά γιατί αυτό μου ζητήθηκε. I'll do my best, so I'll speak in English, right? Okay, Dimitris Stathakopoulos is a very dear friend of mine, and actually he's very eloquent, and I'm really sorry that he's not here because he would actually really amaze you. I'm trying to do my best. So his title of his speech is The Ottoman Empire According Lord George Gordon Byron. In 1824, Lord George Gordon Byron died in Messolonghi during the Greek War of Independence. Byron had come there to support the Greeks in this struggle, but the fever caught in the insalubrious environment killed him. With his death at the age of only 36, he was the last of the second generation of English Romantic poets following John Keats and Percy Bysshe Shelley, who all died young in the Mediterranean region. Since he had traveled east in 1823 to fight the Ottoman Turks, and as he remains today, honored by the Greeks for whom he took up arms, Byron, the Greek form of Byron, after 200 years, is still a popular male name in Greece today, as I think Mr. Melitopoulos also said. It might be imagined that Byron is what the Turks call a Turk Dusmani, a term that can be rendered into English as Turkophobe. That's a question mark there. The general attitude of Byron towards Turks in Turkey is, as shall be seen, a positive one. Indeed, Byron's indubitable Hellenophilia does not mean he was or ought to have been anti-Turkish, for there is no compelling reason why a foreign traveler should assume the traditional enmities of places they like. For a visitor to this region, a fondness for Turkey or Greece need not be mutually exclusive, any more than it would be expected that an Ottoman visitor to England in Byron's time need take on a hatred of France. Byron came to Ottoman Empire in 1810 as part of a much longer journey through the Mediterranean. By the time he reached what were then Ottoman domains in the eastern part of this vast region, he had already undergone numerous exploratory and romantic adventures in Portugal, Spain, and Malta. However, his first proper encounter with Ottoman culture was in the domain of Ali Pasha in Ioannina, in Epirus, and Albania. It is the key to understanding Byron's attitude towards Ottoman Turks and the empire. In a letter, Byron relates to his mother that when he first arrived in Ioannina, Ali Pasha's capital, the governor was absent on campaign. Nevertheless, he had heard that an Englishman of rank was in his dominions and had left orders in Ioannina with a commandment to provide a house and supply me with every kind of necessary gratis. And though I have been allowed to make presents to the slaves, etc., I have not been permitted to pay for a single article of household consumption. This traditional hospitality deeply touched him. This admiration for Ali Pasha came to encompass the Albanian, both Christians and Muslims, people in general. In his autobiographical poem, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, published in 1812, not long after his return to England, Byron compares Albanian hospitality favorably with that of his native country. He is also thrilled to see the Muslim Turco-Albanians dance, being in gaping wonderment to watch the native revels as bounding hand in hand, the man linked to man, yelling their uncouth dirge, long danced the kirtled clan. For Byron, this way of life is superior to what he sees as a hypocritical system of manners and formalized dancing back home in high society. Furthermore, Byron and his contemporaries did not understand the term Turk, as what is understood today. The word then carried more the meaning of Muslim, at least a Muslim of the Ottoman Empire, as of an ethnicity. For instance, the expression to turn Turk did not mean to take Turkish DNA and nationality, but rather it meant to convert to Islam. As such, the Albanians themselves would also have been deemed Turks. That Byron certainly saw the Muslim Albanians as Turks are clear from a letter stating, I like the Albanians much. They are not all Turks. Some tribes are Christians. See Suliotes. Hence, for Byron, while Ali Pasha was an Albanian, he was also a Turk. In expressing his regard for him and his Albanians, Byron could not have distinguished them in any meaningful sense from the empire's Turkish or other Muslim peoples. As shall be seen, what differed Ali Pasha from Byron, from the ruling classes in Istanbul, was not ethnicity or religious culture, but rather what he saw as the less refined and more forthright nature of their more local culture, combined with the way he felt he was treated in the different settings. With its high Ottoman court, Sultan culture would be an uncomfortable setting for Byron's fragile ego, which had been invigorated in the more primitive conditions existing on the Epirot coast, in the Epirus coast. Ephesus was one of the first places to be visited by Byron. Like many other travelers in this series, Byron also visited the straits at Çanakkale. Byron reveals that I swam from Sestos to Abydos. The direct distance is not above a mile, but the current rendered it hazardous. 6 days later, he composed a poem. From the strait, Byron headed on to Constantinople, or Constantinia, some people would say at that time. During his 2-month stay in this significant capital, he was only one among several well-born locals and foreigners. In addition, he took part in an ambassadorial visit to the palace, which was a far grander marvel than that of Ali Pasha. Yet, his biographer, Leslie Marchand, concludes that the reason it failed to touch Byron in the same way is because he was only one of a crowd and not the principal actor. His ego, probably. Yet Byron's moodiness and caprice did not completely blind him to the city's beauty. As well as visiting the place Mary Montagu had lived, Byron saw and was awestruck by the remains of the city walls, which stretched from the fortress of Yedikule, meaning the 7 towers, by the Marmara Sea to the Golden Horn, with their ruined condition, adding to the romantic luster. He declares that, I have seen the ruins of Athens, of Ephesus, and Delphi. I have traversed a great part of Turkey and many other parts of Europe and some of Asia. But I never beheld a work of nature or art that yielded an impression like the prospect on each side from the 7 towers to the end of the Golden Horn. As for the people of capital, he speaks positively of them, describing them as inoffensive and kind. Indeed, he manifests a kind of evolution in the people's character from one end of the Mediterranean world to the other. Byron also supplied his poem Childe Harold's Pilgrimage with notes, and there is one note which reveals in the final analysis Byron's feelings towards Turkey and the Turks. In it, he once again expresses the difference he sees between the high culture of capital with the more natural simplicity of the provinces, in which he avers there does not exist a more honorable, friendly, and high-spirited character than the true Turkish provincial aga. Also, he declares, it is difficult to pronounce what they are. We can at least say what they are not. They are not treacherous. They are not cowardly. They do not burn heretics. They are not assassins, nor has an enemy advanced to their capital. On the contrary, they are faithful to their sultan till he becomes unfit to govern and devout to their God without an inquisition. He also does reveal positive aspects of Turkish manners and culture. One is their financial honesty. He states, in all money transactions with the Muslims, I ever found the strictest honor, the highest disinterestedness. Moreover, he finds them to be generous, gift givers. He is also impressed by the Turkish education system and even affirms that the method of religious toleration in the Ottoman Empire is slightly superior to that of the Great Britain. To interpret his views as the depreciations of a Turkophobe takes a hermeneutical skill that far surpasses mine. That is the end of Dimitris Stathakopoulos' speech. Dimitris is an Ottoman specialist. He has written many books. And again, I say it would have been much better if he was here to say it his own way. I tried to give my best. So now I will continue with my speech, ladies and gentlemen, which is Byron, Zaimis, and other statesmen. So I will go back and say a few words. Actually, I'll say something by heart. I will try to take you back in the background how the Greek Revolution actually started and how it was financed, which all is wonderful, but if you don't have the financial resources, there's nothing you can do. It's not the first thing, I'm not saying that, but that's also necessary. A noble Englishman, a poet, a patriot, and self-proclaimed Greek statesman, a romantic and a person with many faces. His literary works is known, his leadership, especially for just causes for the Greek Revolution, though what is not so well known is his relations with local Greek leaders, patriots, and statesmen who organized and ignited the Greek Revolution of Achaia, especially in the areas of Aegio, Kalavrita, and Patras, in the Peloponnese. Among these leaders were the Zaimis family. Few words pre-revolution. The more known of the family during this generation of revolution were Asimaki Zaimis, the father, and his two sons, Andreas Zaimis and Yanakaki Zaimis. Andreas Zaimis lived from 1871 to 1840. The youngest son, a revolutionary and freedom fighter, who would have later served as president of the First Hellenic Republic in 1826 to 1827. But before, Andreas would return from his studies in Italy. Actually, he was studying in Italy, I think in Pisa, doctor, and then he was somehow also in the Philikete area. And he came back and left his studies to come back in 1821. And they had a very good friendship with Andreas Londos, same age approximately. And these Andreas Londos and Andreas Zaimis were the youngest people and part of the pillars of this revolution. He was greatly inspired to assist in the liberation of Greece and registered himself in the Philikete area as well as other family members. However, it would be his time studying in Italy that he would meet Flemish painter Albert Roberti, who was working in Rome at the time and would later render the portrait seen here. Likewise, there was Andreas' brother, Yanakakis. Yanakakis comes from Yannis. Probably it's a nickname from Yannis, Yanakakis. Actually, even today, what's interesting is that today, people in many places in Achaia do not know each other with their name, but they recognize themselves with their nickname. So many times I ask and they say my name and I say, who is this? Oh, you don't know him? And there's nothing to do. Yanakakis is probably the name of coming from Yannis, but there are many, many nicknames today. And if you don't know the nickname, you don't know who they're talking about. It is true, even today, many people in Kalavrita have nicknames that often precede the legal names themselves. And especially now with Facebook, they don't put a real name, they put a nickname. So you don't know who they are. Revolution at Agia Lavra. The onset of the Greek Revolution began at Agia Lavra in Kalavrita early March 1821 in the Peloponnese. For the record and in context, the Zaimis family pre-revolution were appointed landlords of the Ottoman Empire, tax collectors in the region. Just as after the start of the revolution, as local landlords collect taxes of the region. A few days prior, there was the invitation to all Greeks in Tripoli by Ottoman mandate. The Ottomans realized there was a conspiracy that the Greeks are probably going to do something. So they sent a letter to all the Greek leaders to gather in Tripoli, probably to kill them or to put them in prison. Zaimis was visited just a few days before, did not go to that meeting, but he was visited by the Ottoman bankers and small army in March 1821 to deposit the collected taxes, but the amount the Ottomans wanted was more than he was able to collect in cash. The outstanding difference was agreed upon to be paid at a later date with signed a letter of credit, something like homologies, they used to call, secured as a bond in the name of Andreas Zaimis. So he actually personally signed the homologies for the rest of the money on behalf of his region. After the delegation left, on March 16 exactly, 1821, Chondrogiannis was one of the loyal people to Zaimis, attacked the Ottoman delegation, carrying the taxes, and recaptured the tax money collected, but not the bonds and the homologies that were in the hands of the Tambakopoulos bankers. The first money, that was the attack of Helenospilya, is known today, and it's probably the first attack to the Ottomans before the official start of the revolution. The money that was collected at that time was taken to Agia Lavra, and it was the first fund, the first money that was gathered in order to give, to buy weapons, etc. Much later, after the revolution and during a time when Andreas Zaimis was in a secure position, many years after, of political power and influence in Greek politics, the banking family Tambakopoulos, who had the homologies in their hand, called in the bond for payment signed by Zaimis and legally demanded a remuneration. Andreas Zaimis, having not the capability of paying the bond, defaulted, and the Tambakopoulos bankers confiscated all of his assets and property. Legally, it's very interesting because what you signed before the revolution had legal meaning even after the revolution. That's very interesting, and especially about property, etc. Zaimis died penniless and is buried in the first cemetery of Athens. The Greek state, acknowledging his patriotism and personal sacrifice in assisting to liberate Greece from the Ottomans, offered him land title in an act of gratitude in the form of a property in Rhion across the Bay of Patras that sees Messolonghi, which actually was a marshland of swamps and sea reeds with no real value at the time, but a place where he had used as a strategic hideout near the Phoenician fortress to fight the Ottomans, because he had a shed there and he used to go there when he was coming down from Calavrita to hide himself from the Ottomans. Let us not forget that the Zaimis family also had donated a funding in the secret meeting of Ostitia, today Aegio, a significant amount of funding given in gold coins to establish the first round of financing for the Greek Revolution. That is happening in January 1821. That was the famous meeting in Vostitsa, in Aegio, where a lot of Greeks gathered, and Papaflessas went and tried to start the revolution and gathered a lot of, there was a long debate whether we should start it or not, and they say that in January, they set the date to be in March. The meeting of Vostitsa had been very successful for the then authorized and now I will explain a few words about after the revolution. After the revolution, the first fund was the one that came from the Agia Lavra, Vostitsa, Agia Lavra, and now we go back during the turbulent times in 1823, if I remember well, and we have records that the Trizina Assembly, specifically, was urgent for money, and Giannakakis Zaimis, and with two additional emissaries, Ioannios Orlandos and Andreas Luriotis, that they asked them to find and collect money worldwide. Thus, it would be Giannakakis Zaimis from Achaia, the brother of Andreas, who was appointed as emissary, fiduciary, and signatory, along with Ioannis Orlandos and Andreas Luriotis, on behalf of the newly founded Hellenic Republic, to rendezvous with Lord Byron on the island of Cephalonia. We have the letters that they sent to Lord Byron. I think Byron must have gone to the end of 23 to Cephalonia, and discuss collaborative matters of finance for the revolution, including a pre-loan of a small sum given by Byron personally. The letter said that they asked 30,000 talara. So that was very urgent. They asked very urgently if you can give us 30,000 talara, and then guarantee, Byron would guarantee and put his name in order for this committee to go to London and ask for the first loan that the Greek government would take. And also we should mention the Φιλελληνική εταιρεία, who was based in London, which actually supported this demand. This delegation, it would be the same delegation with Giannakakis Zaimis, who would envoy to England 1824 to 25 to discuss the terms of the first international loan from British bankers as fiduciaries and signatories on behalf of the newly reborn Hellenic Republic. As a note, post-revolution, Giannakakis was appointed as first mayor of Patras in 1836, then member of parliament in 1841, and continued his life until his death between the Patras house and architectural marvel designed by the architect Kleanthis. He had a very beautiful house in Patras that unfortunately is non-existent today. In closing, it is unclear if Giannakakis Zaimis or other Zaimi progressed their connections with Byron before he died in Messolonghi, April 1824. Further research in the archives may be needed to discover more information, probably about Byron's archives in Italy. But it's clear that it was alliance and strong bond between Byron and the Zaimis family, who was prepared not only to offer personal funding and leverage his influence to secure an international loan from England in support of the First Hellenic Republic, but who was also ready to do battle and lay down life in the Second Siege of Messolonghi, as we know, in 1824, through Byron would expire of fever days prior. We, the people in Greece, are grateful to Byron, the poet and self-proclaimed Greek statement. And something I was trying, I'm still doing my research. I would like to say that there were many efforts at that time to loan Greece. You have to imagine that there was no actually state. We're talking about 1823, 24. There were other efforts through France. We know that the regiment of Saint John of the Jerusalem that offered another loan, and there were other offers for specific loans. So maybe a conference in the future about the specific loans would be interested. But the terms of the other loans were many, many different. I'm not saying that the loan we actually got from the English bankers was the best. It had a 5% interest rate, and most of the money was taken in advance, even before gone to Greece. And I think it went through Zakynthos. It was how much the money would go to a state that was in, a rebel state at the time. But we have to see what were the other chances. France tried to give a loan. Other people tried to give a loan, but what actually they were asking was not as good as well. So thank you very much.
Λόρδος Byron. Η Επανάσταση είναι κυταρική υπόθεση. Κυταρίνης απίκασμα. Κοσμικός έρος χώρο και χρόνο καθορίζει. Η αθανασία παράπλευρη ωφέλεια της ορφικής αρμονίας. Ή τη στεθηρία εξημερώνει τον φόβο κάθε έκλειψης ηλίου, τον τρόμο κάθε έλλειψης εξορκίζει, την αγωνία εξορίζει, την ανασφάλεια εξημερώνει, τη δουλεία ακυρώνει, τον εξανδραποδιστή εξοντώνει, της ελευθερίας άνεμο αναζωπυρώνει, που καμία φυλακισμένη υλοενέργεια να αναχαιτήσει δεν μπορεί. Ελευθερία, Eros elelef, Io vakhevi evan, Κι δαμάλα ιό, κι βοηδομάτα η όλη, το χαμό της κλαβιάς υποδηλώνει, σε χάρο αλώνει γενναίος αν περπατάς, τότε γυμνός δεν πας στον άδη. Η δόξα τότε σε σκέπη, με του ανέσπερου του ήλιου την αγκαλιά, άλλος στέφει με θυστικά κορμιά, της απελευθέρωσης ασφαλές σημάδι. Lord Byron. Now in English. The revolution, it is a cellular affair, cellulose depiction. Cosmic qubit, space and time determines. Athanasia, immortality, collateral benefit of Orphic harmony. That is the beasts that tames, the fear of every solar eclipse, the terror of every lack exorcises. Agony banishes, insecurity tames, slavery cancel, then slavery exterminates, liberty's wind relentless, where no imprisoned material energy to intercept cannot. Ελευθερία, Eros, Elelef, Io vakhevi evan, and the Haifer, Io, and Voidomata Ioli, the loss of slavery indicates. In Charonta, threshing flow, brave as you walk, then naked you don't go in Hades. Glory then covers you with the rising of the sun hugging her. Hello, crowns intoxicating bodies, liberalization's safe sound. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that voice and verse, Konstantino. I'd now like to welcome another wonderful voice and poet, Orfeas Apergis. Please, would you join me at the podium?
Hello, everyone. I want to thank, get my bearings, sorry. I want to thank the British School at Athens and especially Ginger Zaimis for the kind invitation. Ginger, I don't want this to count against my time, okay? Because I just want to say something to connect what has gone before to what I wanted to say. So just a brief thing in English, because I'm afraid that most of it will be in Greek. I'll just come to that. I'd like to refer you to what will be forthcoming edition of a publication from the European Society for Modern Greek Studies under the auspices of the Ministry of Culture about, again, commemorating the 200 years, the bicentennial from Byron's death. A set of articles have been written about Byron. I'd just briefly like to mention something from one of these articles, which I found very interesting and connects very well with what I think fascinating remarks that Sofka Zinoviev made earlier. So it's Byron traveling to Greece on board the brig Hercules, the Briki, the ship, July 1823, carried Byron to his final trip to Greece, dropped anchor off the coast of the volcanic island Stromboli. You've probably heard. And there we have Edward John Trelawney, his famous by now traveling companion. I'd just like to say something about Byron's mood, which for me is between, rests on two sides of the same river. One is the tragic, and the other one, which we didn't mention until now, is the satirical. He tells Trelawney, as Trelawney notes in his memoir, which Sofka referred to, Byron was eager to transform his experiences, forthcoming experiences in Greece, into a heroic narrative suitable for a sentimental age, if given the chance. So Byron says, commenting on his upcoming adventures in Greece, if things are farcical, they will do for a Don Juan. This is famous Don Juan, we say in Greek. They would call it Don Juan in English. That was his great comedy of, the shortcomings of man and woman. So he says, if things are farcical, they will do for Don Juan. If heroic, you have another canto for Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, which I think Ginger mentioned also. So these two epic poems are like the two sides of the same Byron, where satire and tragedy go hand in hand. So with that in mind, now I'd like my time to commence. Sorry, a bit of cheating. I will read to you something in the satirical vein. Pas ρομαντικός φιλέλλην. The footnote says, η φράση παραφρασμένη προέρχεται από το νεανικό δοκίμιο του Winston Churchill, τα δεινά του απικισμού. Η πλήρης διατύπωση έχει ως εξής. Έως τώρα λέγαμε ότι οι ρομαντικοί ήσαν φιλέλληνες. Στο εξής θα λέμε ότι οι φιλέλληνες είναι ρομαντικοί. Ζωοδρόμιον curriculum vivendi του αξιομνημονεύτου ποιητού της εν Ελλάδη παροικίας των Φιλελλήνων, κυρίου Oliver Riordan. Ο κύριος Oliver Riordan ανήκει στην γενιά των cool Britannites, δηλαδή των μοδάτων και χειραφετημένων εκείνων Βρετανιδών, οι οποίοι ανδρώθηκαν στα χρόνια του Αντωνίου Μπλερ του καταφάτου, ώστις έκανε το ναι πολιτική πράξη και φαντάστηκε τη Βρετανία ως χώρα των ομοθυμοπροθήμων. Μη θέλοντας να μετάσχει της εγχειρήσεως αυτής επί του πτώματος της γυραιάς Αλβιώνος, ο κύριος Ριόρνταν αποφάσισε να σαλπάρει, όντας ίδιος εκ της φύτρας του ευφυής και ξεσκολισμένος, ακολουθώντας τα χνάρια των προγόνων του εκείνων, ήτινες έκαναν σειρμόν το θάνατο, παραθήν αλός, και δόξασαν τον παράλιον έρωτα, όχι τόσον ως άκουροι ματαλιώτες, αλλά πλειότερον ως βασιλείς των νεφών του ρομαντισμού του προπαρελθόντος αιώνος. Δηλαδή ο Ριόρνταν εζήλωσε ένα θάνατο βύρονος στα σπλάχνα μιας νεοεπανάστασης. Όμως τέτοια επανάσταση δεν ευρήκε. Ούτε βέβαια κατάφερε να πνιγεί στην αγκαλιά της θάλασσας όπως ο Πέρσι Μπις, παρόλο που του είχαν συστήσει την ετωλοακαρνανία για θανάτους και πνιγμούς τη αυτής φύσεως. Βέβαια η φύση ήταν επανόρια και έτσι ο Ριόρνταν θαλασσεδάρι ευαρέστος και εν τέλει ελισμόνησε να αποθάνει. Κάθεται τώρα στα βαθύ και καλαφατίζει το σκαρί του, ηλιοθεραπευόμενο συστηματικά, ουμήν και συστημικά. Κάθεται μάλιστα και αναθυμάται τη ρίζα του την παρόχθια, νιώθει την παγωνιά του Tyneside στα τριχωτά μεριά του και όσο να πει σχεδόν λυπάται και προσβλέπει, γυρεύει τα πατρώα και σαν να επιθυμεί αυτά που επιθυμάται. Βλέπει ξανά τη μάνα του από ευγενική γενιά όπου την είχε ζωγραφίσει και ο Γκέινσμπορο, προτού εκφυλιστούν οι τόριδες και επικρατήσει οριστικά ο Ντιζραέλη. Τη βλέπει στιτή, ολόρθη και την εθέλει κοντά, αγκαλιαστά, να πάρουν τσάι από τον Νταρτζίλινγκ και από το Ουλόγκ, και έξω να βρέχει και να μουλιάζει τις ξυλοσκεπές. It's grim up north. Κι ύστερα βλέπει τον πατέρα του, τον επαναστάτη, που εθαύμαζε το Wilson ακόμα και στα ιστερνά του, όταν έπαθε τη συμφόρηση και είπανε πως δεν μπορούσε άλλο να πρωθυπουργέψει, από την ιδέα του πατρός του πήρε και το όνομα, το Oliver, ενώ στα κανονικά θα τον έλεγαν Percival. Είναι καλύτερα ίσως έτσι στο νότο με τους καρμπονάρους, έτσι τα σκέφτεσαι καλύτερα και με πιο διάβγεια αυτά που περισσότερο αγάπησες. Όμως αγαπάει και την Ελλάδα, τους Έλληνες. Πώς διασκεδάζει που Ελλάδο θα πει παγωτό. Μοιάζουν τόσο τα ισπανικά με τα ελληνικά, αλλά ο φιλισπανισμός σπανίζει. Και τους βλέπει όλους ετούτους τους Ελλαδίτες να λιώνουνε και να ξελιγώνονται μέσα στην πατρογονική ζέστα. Σαν καλός φιλέλληνας, ο κύριος Ριόρνταν εγκαταβεί στην Εύβοια, κοντά στις Ροβιές, εκεί όπου είχε μεγάλο τσιφλίκι ο Εγγλέζος ο Μπέικερ. Του αρέσει η Εύβοια γιατί είναι σαν ξηρά Αγγλία. Πράσινη και ξηρή σαν το χυμό των δικών του προγόνων. Και αν δεν έχει πιο πολλά γελάδια, το λέει τουλάχιστον με το όνομά της και πιο πολύ του θυμίζει τον τόπο του, στον Τάιν. Τα ποιητικά του κυρίου Ριόρνταν είναι λιγάκι στριφνά και δύσκολα στο στόμα, είναι πολιτικά και ακρεφνή με σαν παιδική ερωτική αφέλεια, ο λίγον χυμαρόδη και αλυσιτελή, αλλά εκείνος επιμένει και περιμένει το τέρι του με τα σπαστά ελληνικά του. Καμιά φοιτητριούλα με κάρτα στο Interrail. Υπάρχει ακόμα το Interrail, για δεν υπάρχει. Να της δείξει τον τόπο αδέξια, να τις διαβάζει, τις αγοράζει παγωτό και αυτή τον κοιτάζει φιλίποπτα και ανιδονικά και πάνε να φιληθούνε και εκείνος να μην μπορεί. Ναι, δεν μπορεί, δεν δουλεύει ο ερωτάς του μέσα σε τέτοια θερμοκρασία καλοκαιριάτικα και ύστερα πάλι από την αρχή χειμώνας, αποθυμιές, ψυχανεμίσματα. Δεν βαριέσαι, παρά να φέρνεις κάρβονα στο Newcastle, καλύτερα να κομίζεις γλάφκας εις Αθήνας. Έτσι μένεις και στην Ευρώπη. Εδώ ο ποιητής αναφέρεται στο Brexit. Είναι το παροιμιώδες αγγλιστή sting in the tail. Ήτι το κεντρί που δεν κατάλαβες ποτέ. Πότε σου το χώσανε. Βρε τον Αντώνιο Μπλερ. Μπλερ θα λέτε και θα κλαίτε. Θέτε δεν θέτε. Μακάρι να ήταν συγγενής και του Ερίκου Μπλερ, αυτού που σοφίστηκε το ψευδόνυμο Γεώργιος Orwell. All's well that ends well. But what if it never ends? Για το Brexit μπορεί ο ποιητής να μιλήσει μόνο με παραμύθια και αν σας μιλώ με παραμύθια και σατιρικές παραβολές είναι γιατί τα ακούτε γλυκότερα. Και η βλακεία δεν κουβεντιάζεται γιατί είναι ζωντανή και μιλάει πολύ και προχωράει σαν οδοστρωτήρας. Δεν το χωράει ο νους μου να είναι το Brexit ο τελευταίος σταθμός. Γιατί σε εκείνη την ευρωπαϊκή χώρα μεγάλωσα, στο ίδιο κολέγιο με τον Byron, στο Trinity College, και τώρα νιώθω σαν να βγήκε από μέσα μου ο μισός μου εαυτός, ο καλός, και να ανεχώρησε προς άγνωστον κατεύθυνση, ή μάλλον σαν να μου τον βγάλανε με το τσιγκέλι κάτι τσομπαναρέοι πατριδοκάπηλοι και να μου τον ταΐσανε στα γίδια και τις μαϊμούδες. You are welcome, sirs, to Europe, goats and monkeys. Ευχαριστώ.
Thank you, Orfeas. That was quite tongue-in-cheek. Thank you. I'd also like to say, just before I begin again, there are 3 exhibitions that one should see, or suggestively one should see, on Byron. There's the one at the Academy of Athens, which, as I hear it, will be extended through the end of December. There's also the very distinguished exhibition across the way at our friends at the American School at the Unidios Library. And there's also a wonderful online exhibition that has been curated by the Lύκειο Ελληνίδων online called 1,000 Stitches. So just keep it in mind before the end of December. The Unidios closes on the 5th of December, and then the Academy, I think, is extending to the end of December. But the other one, the Lύκειον, is there online. One should see it. So I will be reading to you today excerpts from a talk called Byron Shelley in the Italian and Greek Years, mostly the poetry of it. So I'd like to keep it a little bit short because I know we're on time or trying to be on time. What I'm reminded of with Shelley and Byron's relationship, I actually kind of perceive them as kindred souls. And it's really through those axioms of opposite, one understands self and other through the closest relationships that we have or we encounter in life. And I think this is most apt, in particularly with Byron and Shelley. And so I'm reminded of a famous quote by William Blake, an iconic romantic, who so keenly encaptured the greater knowing of the metaphysics and philosophy as Shelley was quite keen on knowing from an early age. To see a world in a grain of sand, heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. So this relationship, Shelley and Byron's relationship, would really allow themselves, in my humble opinion, to see more of themselves through the eyes of the other. And so this piece of poetry I'm going to read or excerpt from, written in sonnet cycles, are actually a progressed dialogue after Shelley leaves life and while Byron is in Greece. Hindsight, Shelley to Byron. The air calms while it distills lower dimensions of earthly realm, sound tuning space, all that which mills, place where ether meets matter, while merging soul on harmony's platter, awaiting portal to open as veil thins in full cognition, ecstasy in submission. It is said, though I have long known, like Plato reminds on large scale, a poet participates in the eternal, the infinite and one, bringing forth all of the arts while co-creating beauty in abundance into the world as goodness charts, mapping humanity's fate as destiny's conundrums. For we, Byron, are not subservient to the vicissitudes of history, but rather partake in the Platonic mysteries, embracing thought time's elation into the permeant, drop by drop that ripples ocean's reflection, embossed by passion's inspiration, sown with flecks of momentary vision from that which enables full imagination, into the realm of the subliminal, the beautiful, the intellectual. Come, child Harold, thou must go forth. Poetry and politics are feed and moral bread, and we, the poets, living or dead, are the unacknowledged legislators who enact change with sonnet's sword. For upon leaving life, I have found it is your light, not your wit, that grounds the collective quilt. So go to her, answer her call, speak friend, speak Greek as brethren kin, allies heart bright with Greece to heal, amend, sovereignty carved with glory and grace, though brute force shall attempt to unshape, remember it is truth, that which permeates, lead with love, honor, courage, faith. For I have come forth and gone as frail form, yet pard-like spirit, beautiful and swift, yet ignorant and disconnected from my it. Simply put, God is presence, which keys the lock of life unto eternal joy, abundance, peace beyond the illusion, less the strife. And your role is not to plead for pennies, pence, or blessings, but rather see the omnipresence of divinity in all of existence. Like Adonai, I am not dead, yet hath awakened from the dream of life, apothesized in the heavenlies in permanent beauty. And so I too beacon from eternal beyond where thou art, amidst the any, the all, that which is one with manifestation, nursing need and sustenance called the journey, purpose, our destination. But before you self-proclaim thyself, new statesman of she, the illustrious Greece, less wagering too much off the shelf, triggered by ego's hand of how, lust, grown by myth, watered limerence. What giveth she, Byron, Trojan horse or deliverance? I shan't say for you, though she has seen a thing or two, likened to Keats' mistress, the urn, where beloveds function as mirror keys to justify the need for adventure that burn. Yet in hindsight, do you ever level up or transcend romantic notions which plot your bitter end, affectations that escalate intent to deface 400 years of Ottoman landscape? Sing, child Harold, sing ye cantos now, it be a myriad eye of storm's hour, and we who kneel upon democracy's pew, while bear witness to modern riot and spew, burnished and red with vandal her airy halls, set fire ablaze to floors, ceilings, and walls, in the righteous name to rebalance the swagger of oppression and imbalance by those who sit higher above than you, me, and the we, puppeteers who writhe with crafty words, those more equal than equal these. What say you, English dove? What say you, Philhellenes? Do tell, please. Is it the gift of life wrapped in the delusion? Or is it truth, people's ideal of illusion? Come, blue-eyed maiden of heaven, but thou, alas, didst ever ye one mortal sing inspire? Goddess of wisdom, here thy temple was, and is despite war and wasting fire, and years that bade thy worship to expire. But worse than steel and flame, the ages slow, is the dread scepter and dominion dire of men who never felt the sacred glow. Thoughts of thee and thine on polished breast bestow. What say you, Byron? Was it worth all you dreamt, blood that bleed? Or was it vanity's crush which deceived? So, thank you. Thank you very much. On that note, I should like to introduce Penny Sakopoulou. She is philologist. She's many things, as all of us wear many hats this evening. Philologist and former Ephoros of the Lύκειον Ελληνίδων. And she has a whole parea of wonderfully garbed, frocked dancers here this evening, which she's going to share with us. Penny, please.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τη Βρετανική Σχολή Αθηνών για τη φιλοξενία. Ελπίζουμε να φέραμε μαζί λίγοι από την Ελλάδα που αγάπησε ο Λόρδος Byron απόψε μαζί μας. And ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that the president of the Lύκειον Ελληνίδων, Mrs. Maria Papamarkou, and our administrative council accepted this invitation. And we're here tonight in order to celebrate with you Lord Byron's 200th anniversary, an event curated by Ginger Zaimis, one of the younger generation members of the Zaimis family. You know, the ties of the Zaimis family to the Lύκειον Ελληνίδων go back many years and several generations of active women, including a president of the Lύκειον Ελληνίδων, Ioanna Zaimis, and of course, Ginger's mother-in-law, Anna Maria. But please allow me, before anything else, to tell you a few things about our institution. The Lύκειον Ελληνίδων is one of the oldest women's associations in Greece, founded 113 years ago in 1911 by, here in Athens, by a group of intellectual women under the leadership of Kalliroi Siganou Paren, a well-known educator, first woman journalist, and many other things, and a fighter for women's rights. It was founded with two goals: to serve and protect the women and to preserve the Greek customs and traditions. Of course, a very important chapter of our heritage is that of our traditional costumes. When the Lύκειον Ελληνίδων was founded at the dawn of the 20th century, the Western fashions had already started to invade Greece and the big cities, and women in the villages were very eager to abandon their original dresses and to adopt the new trends. Confronting the imminent danger of the invaluable Greek costumes being lost, the Lύκειον, in collaboration with local authorities and through various donations, started to build what is today one of the largest collections of authentic traditional costumes in Greece. All these are carefully preserved in the Costume Museum of Lύκειον Ελληνίδων. Exact copies of these are used nowadays by our dancing group in presentations and performances. Talking about Greek costumes, and having heard tonight so much about Lord Byron, we can't help but bring to our minds his very British figure depicted in numerous portraits and works of art, wearing the legendary Greek fustanella. And he was not the only one. As the war of the Greeks for liberation evokes feelings of sympathy, primarily among the liberal-minded circles of the Western world, a movement of unprecedented momentum and impact is created. Apart from the practical solidarity of many Philhellenes volunteers toward the fighting Greeks, the Greek cause inspires intellectuals and artists. Thus, a popular theme of many paintings or book illustrations of that period is often a Western European posing among ancient ruins with the Acropolis of Athens on the background, wearing a fustanella costume. But what was the fustanella? The fustanella was the everyday dress of the shepherd communities throughout the Balkan range for many years. It was gradually associated with the guerrilla fighters of the Greek independence war, known as Kleftes and Armatoli. It constituted a sort of military dress of the chieftains and the warriors, but not a uniform. It was like a part of their body, their companion in their daily struggles. They would polish their arms with it, wipe their sweat and blood on it, sleep on it. After the liberation, Otto, the first king of modern Greece, adopted it as the official attire of his court, following the advice of his Philhellene father, King Ludwig I of Bavaria. Otto himself admired that costume and had it made for him by one of the best tailors in Nafplion. He never gave it up, not even when he was deposed, and following his wish, he was buried in it. It is under this status of the official attire that the fustanella traveled to European capitals worn by the Greek ambassadors, by Ioannis Koletis in Paris, Georgios Mavrokordatos in Rome, Ioannis Genadios in London, to name a few. It is at the same period that it is established as a festive costume in all the villages of the Peloponnese and central Greece. In our days, the fustanella is ever present. Children wear it on national days and parades, folk dancers at their performances. And of course, it's the official attire of the Evzones, the presidential guards. Generations of Greeks and foreigners have associated in their minds the figure of the tsolias, that's how we call the fustanella wearer. They have associated him with the braveness, the ideals, and the aspirations of the entire Greek nation. It goes without saying that the fustanella costume, having traveled such a long journey in time and space, has arrived to us in all kinds of variations. From our costume collection in Lύκειο Ελληνίδων, we have chosen 3 different types of men's costumes based on the fustanella and 3 women's costumes from regions of Greece that played a leading role in the Greek Revolution of 1821. Before the costume and dance presentation, because now we're going to present you, θα σας παρουσιάσουμε μερικές από τις φορεσιές μας και ελληνικούς χορούς. I would like to thank our participants here tonight, especially Iliana Thimiopoulou, a member of our dancing group and a member of the Administrative Council of Lύκειων Ελληνίδων, and the effort of national costumes. She's the one that took care of the beautiful costumes that you will see tonight, along with Alexis Thimiopoulos, who was responsible for the men's wardrobe. And also big thanks to Tassos Plitsis, the dance teacher of the folk dancing group of Lύκειων Ελληνίδων. I must mention that all the men and women in costumes that you see here today are members of our folk dancing group, They are either students or come from various professional backgrounds, and they are all volunteers. So I will ask the first two couples to approach. Iliana Thimiopoulou and Aliki Nefeli Mavraki. Alexis Thimiopoulos and Petros Markandonis. Iliana and Aliki Nefeli wear the costume of Leonidion. Leonidion is situated in eastern Peloponnese in an area known as Tsakonia. A very famous dance comes from this area, Tsakonikos Horos. The women's costume is a sleeveless dress with a white red felt hem. I don't know if you can see that. A sleeved bodice, zipuni, that you see here. Sleeveless red felt coat over, and a silk kerchief on the breast. Of course, there is a asimozunaro going along, a buckle, a silver buckle on the waist. And it was a very particular way women used to wear their fez those days, the red fez with a blue tassel. They used to wound around it their plaited hair. That's about the women. Now, the men in this company here were a rich example of the urban fustanella with the doulamas. This is the coat that you see that they wear over their fustanella. Obviously, it is an urban costume. It is very well decorated. It's a festive costume for special occasions. So they wear this overcoat, doulamas, which was a type of overcoat worn in the Balkans, in the wider area, at the time of the Ottoman Empire. Please notice their leggings. They're called tuzlukia, and they are all matching. If you notice, the leggings, the doulamas, the family that is worn on top, they are all matching, which they call in costumes language, we call it a takimi. So they are all very well embroidered by the terzides. Those were special embroiders that used to do this kind of embroidery that was really difficult to be done by regular embroiders. So the terzides took care of that. It was a work that was taking several days to be done. The terzides were groups of special artists that would travel to the different houses and work on the costumes there. I would like all of our people here to turn around so you can see their backs. It's interesting sometimes to see the back of a costume. You will see it, however, when they will be dancing. So let's go back in front, and thank you very much. And we will ask, we do all that rather, don't want to take much time. There's so much to say about the Greek costumes. So we will like to ask now the next group, which is from central Greece. We have here Christina Noutsu and Christina Alexaki, so, and Michalis Papadimitriou and Christos Chalkidis. Aren't they beautiful? So the costume of the Sphina is a costume worn in different variations in the area of Phakida in central Greece. It's if we take the parts of it, it's a silk chemise, pukamiso. Most of the Greek costumes include the pucamiso. You start wearing a pucamiso before anything else. Here, the pucamiso is silk, is really very well, and it's ornated on the sleeves and on the neck with lace, and over it, they wear what we call a siguna. Siguna, and if you would like ladies to turn, we can see the back of the siguna. This is the jacket, the woolen jacket that we find in many women's and men's costume in Epirus, in Thessaly, in Central Greece, in Peloponnese. There is a whole group of costumes. Angeliki Hadjimichali, the logographer, she had a whole family of costumes that belonged to the Siguna. They were actually, she had divided the Greek costumes in 3 big families: the Siguna costumes, the Kavadi costumes, which were with an overcoat, and the dress costumes that had as a main thing a big dress. So please turn around, and we have here a red apron, a red felt apron, also decorated in the same way with special way that the previous embroideries that you saw. And on the head, they wear what we call a gaza with a fundus. It's a gauze decorated with tassels, with small tassels. It's a rather simple, little Doric, let's say, in a way, costume, but always we like it very much. And the men here also wear a simpler kind of fustanella with just a black waistcoat. What you see different here and that you don't see very often in men's costume is jewelry. The men's costumes, generally, the Greek costumes are very simple and usually dull colored. There isn't very much, so much that you see in women's costumes. But here we have a kusteki, a cross type in a shape of a cross-like kusteki on their chest. And of course, the barezi, the black scarf, on the head, which is the other type of headdress. Usually you are used to see a fez with a fustanella, but here we have the black scarf, which is the other version of complementing the fustanella costume. Thank you. And I will ask the last group to come up here. We have here Alexandra Katara, Naya Tirikou, and we have Yorgos Tsiakos and Theodoris Gouvas. Now, the 2 Christinas here, no, here we have the Alexandra and Naya. The 2 ladies here wear the costume of Spetses, an island that most of you know, an island of the Saronikos Sea, that played an important role in the Greek War of Independence and was the home of the celebrated war heroine Laskarina Bouboulina. Her fame had traveled to France, where they referred to her as the Greek Jeanne d'Arc. And soon French ladies adopted the dresses that they called the robe de dame à la Bobelina. And so did the women in Austria and Bavaria. The dress is one of the kind of dresses of those days. It's the same kind of Biedermeier dress that we will find in an Amalia costume. It used to be different in older days, but with time, it ended up in this rather simpler kind of dress with a zipuni, velvet zipuni on top. And what is interesting is the scarf called pietes or tsemberi, which is carefully arranged around the head and held in place by a special pin. If you turn around, we will see the way the headdress is kept in place. And thank you, turn again. And Thodoris and Yorgos were the type of fustanella with 3 different vests. Actually, you don't understand, but they were 3 different kind of vests. One is the gileki that they wear over their pukamiso, which is a sleeveless waistcoat. And then they have the family over it. And the family is a sleeved waistcoat, but sometimes the sleeves are buttoned and worn on the hands. Otherwise, they just are worn flank freely down the back. And the fermoiedeko, which is the last vest they wear over their family. On the head, as you notice, a silk scarf is wrapped around the red fez in the same way that we noticed that in Lord Byron's portrait by Philip Thomas that we saw in our invitation tonight. So those were the costumes we would like to present to you tonight. And now, χωρί από την Πελοπόννησο και τη στερεά Ελλάδα, dances from the Peloponnese and central Greece. Thank you.